Hello, everyone, and this is Nightmare welcoming you to Whale FM Makerspace Edition. In this show, we talk about everything and anything art and crypto in the NFT scene with designers and creators alike, otherwise known as non-fungible tokens. Our guest today is Peter Mohrbacher, the prolific fantasy artist whose work continues to shape pop culture, influencing art, tabletop, video games, movies, and more. And now, with his latest addition to the Angelarium series, new celestial beings have emerged, reflecting optimism, growth, and the expansion of consciousness. Peter, super hyped to have you with us here today.
Yeah, I'm pumped to be here. Thanks for having me.
A lot of people were really excited to hear. A lot of people were fanning over the fact that they had collected so much of your work over the years and the different things that you have touched. For anyone not familiar that's tuning in today, could we just get a little synopsis on you and your background and journey in art?
Yeah, sure. So I've been at it for a while. I don't remember exactly when I jumped in professionally, but I used to work on in the tabletop business, doing stuff like Magic the Gathering. I do their card art. I helped them design some of their worlds, and then I worked in the video game industry, working on Facebook games and MMOs. And then about 8 years ago, could be more at this point because I haven't been keeping up. I quit all that to go independent and build my own art brand called Angelarium, and that's been my full-time thing ever since. So I've been an independent creator for a really long time now, and my fans have been supporting me on places like Patreon, buying artwork and merchandise from me. And then, back in 2018, I got the call from Makerspace to ask if I wanted to start selling NFTs, and I jumped in immediately. So I've got a collection of a dozen uh, Angels of the Zodiac, which are minted all the way back in late 2018 on Makerspace.
Definitely OG credentials right there. But before we even get to that, you have a prolific style. You've obviously had a lasting impact on the culture of fantasy art and pop culture in general. When you were younger, what was your exposure to art? Was this something that you went to school for? Were you just naturally inclined and gravitated towards it?
Well, I think I was like, I don't know if I'm naturally inclined, but I gravitated towards it as like an escape. Um, I got into it when I was in high school just because like I've never been like a super personable person. I've been more of an introvert, and so it was an opportunity to like engage with people in a way that was sort of indirect. So I got really into it. I think part of it is an extension of me being a really big fan of anime and video games. And then so like my biggest original inspirations are all from like you know uh, those fandoms, and then from there I like my inspirations expanded into like more fantasy art stuff as well as like surrealism and pop art, and I keep trying to add more and more stuff onto the pile as I like you know keep creating new things, trying to find new inspirations to grow from.
Now, were you a player of tabletop games and D&D and things of that nature, or
Oh
MMOs?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a weekly D&D group for a while around that time, and then I also played MMOs going back to like EverQuest, and then also like got into Magic the Gathering around third edition. So like not true OG cred, but that must have been 20 years ago at this point, more than that I first bought a pack of Magic cards.
Right. Well, you're making me feel really old, being that I'm Ultima Online was like my my entrance into the space there.
You got me beat by a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll keep those actual dating to themselves. They need to carbon date me. So you talk about those being influences in kind of the style and aesthetic you were drawn towards. Did you, just flesh this out yourself? Did you end up going to school for, art in particular, or just something you did personally?
Well, I went to school hoping to get into the game industry. Uh, so I went to a school that said they had like a game art program, which there weren't a lot of schools offering that. But what it turned out to be was like, if a school was offering a game art program back when I was going to college, it was because it was like a total scam. And so the school I went to an art school, but they don't exist anymore because they got sued by the government, and yeah, it was not it was a lot of where I really got my education was really on the internet. I don't like to consider myself self-taught. I think of it more as like peer taught, like learning from what other people were posting online, meeting other artists and getting to learn from them directly. And so, it was more of a community spirit that drove my education more so than an academic program. And so that's one of the reasons why I've always been try to be a part of education and like help teach other people what I know and help spread my knowledge as much as possible, is because like I feel like I'm the beneficiary of a lot of generosity from people over the years. So I've always tried to pay that forward.
Very cool. How would you characterize your art style and aesthetic?
I call it. I was always calling it surrealist fantasy. It's funny. Uh, I made this brand name Angelarium back when I started the series with the first 12 angels. But I see the word Angelarium being used as like a descriptor to, there's a lot of other art that has the same kind of painted finish, mixture of surrealism and fantasy. And like, so there's a lot of other art brands and like art curators online that sort of use the same moniker. That the sort of mixture of influences that I've made has sort of become its own kind of recognized style, which I think is kind of cool. When you go to like Pinterest and you pull up one of my pieces, all the recommendeds underneath, like half of them are mine and half of them people think are mine. Like I get people, contact me on Instagram saying somebody's like reposting my work, and it's like it's not. It's just somebody who's been inspired by my style.
Yeah, I think someone left a comment when the announcement was made that basically giving you the credit for the entire Diablo franchise or something of that nature, saying
No,
that,
no. I mean,
well, essentially they were saying the juxtaposition of like angels and demons and it kind of being kind of a fluid as far as neutrality and things of that nature. They really
sure.
associated with your art style.
The closer connection is actually that one of my stylistic influences and somebody who I really adore is an artist named Brahm. And he did the cover for Diablo 2 and then did a lot of concept art for Diablo 3. So there is some shared DNA there, but you have to go a step backwards, further back than me to find it.
Right. 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon or something like that.
Well, I mean, I believe really strongly that there's each artist brings only a kernel of originality to their creations, and that everything else can always be trained, sort of connected backwards through this long chain of creative material where that every artist participates in. So I see like there's this sort of continuum of creativity that exists between people where all this stuff ends up being shared. You see these certain key influences come up over and over again. Like, this piece is really heavily inspired by Beksinski, who gets referenced a lot in pop culture these days. But then I
Right.
think there's a lot of artists in the fantasy space that get introduced to Beksinski because they're fans of my work, and then somebody goes, "Oh, do you know who that guy's ripping off?" And like, this is basically true of every artist that anybody looks up to forever. So I really enjoy that cycle of people discovering artists' work through like the contemporary influences and stuff like that. I always find that lineage to be really cool.
Definitely. And your influences obviously felt, throughout the industry, whether it's video games, movies, a lot of things really seem to lean heavily into this aesthetic that you're really curating here and perpetuating forward from the people that you've gleaned some things from. I'd love to hear more about your process and how you actually go about creating these, because they have a real, tactile almost aesthetic. It looks like painting.
Well, it's the process is very much like a traditional painting, but done in Photoshop, where 99% of what I'm doing is being done with the brush tool, just with and I would say like when I've experimented with physical medium, it's most like acrylic painting, somewhere between acrylic and oils. Um, but I do a lot of mixing on the surface where I'm sampling and reapplying colors straight onto the canvas. So it's kind of like yeah, I'm pushing around these lots of little thin layers and blending them around, and a lot of that is just me with the brush tool spending hours with the thing, enjoying the process of like exploring the surface and exploring the piece and seeing what it wants. All those little swirls and stuff, those aren't really planned out as much as they're discovered as I, you know, move around the canvas up close, and then I kind of zoom out and discover where I am. And, so there's this there's a really huge discovery element to this where I'm just sort of spending time with the piece in this sort of meditative way, finding out what it wants to be, you know, and all that gets built up on top of the structure of traditional drawing. A lot of these start off as a pencil drawing, and then I build up like the texture and materials and everything all through the painting process on top of that.
Right, and like even here in this piece, there's animation added as well, so lots of layers. What does this process take you from start to finish? You know, from conceptualization to finish. Do you typically go through one piece to completion, or just touch and go with different things as the inspiration strikes?
Oh, I've almost always just I've started with one piece and then worked all the way through the final before starting on something new. And you know, more recently, as I've with NFT projects where I'm doing multiple pieces concurrently, I found that that's actually been really productive as far as like getting a larger collections done at once. But for all of these, you're looking at is like they're almost done in sequence. You know, a lot of them were done 1 week or 1 month at a time for like my Patreon supporters, and then released progressively as prints on a monthly basis. So it was like part of the reason I have so many of them is because it's really just been a matter of trying to be consistent over a really long period of time. And I've always got a release date coming up 30 days away at least. And I've always got to be like producing new stuff and creating new stuff to support the fans and like, support the brand. So I've been just commissioning myself over and over and over again, one piece at a time. And now I've like looked up years later, discovered I have this giant pile of angel art left over as like a byproduct of me wanting to spend all this time painting.
Yeah, I mean, the level of consistency is incredible, especially with this, quality. Why do you think that your style really resonates so much? You have a huge following. People credit you with influencing so much that's out there. What did people really drawn to in your aesthetic, do you think?
I have absolutely no idea. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky. Like the look of it is really like totally accidental as a result of like my failings as an artist more so than my accomplishments. Like it's sort of me attempting to do realism and whiffing over and over and over again. And so I have to figure out how do I like let the mistakes continue to happen? How do I continue to be imprecise, but also like how do I still get it to a point where it feels finished and correct to me? And that's really just a matter of my own eye and the fact that other people are as attached to this as they are is like just makes me feel really fortunate because it's not something I have control over. And so I see myself as sort of a steward of the process where I need to continue to be there as like a serving it, but I do not feel like I'm in command of it.
Many would say that you really helped define a genre and are kind of leading the way there with the aesthetic. So thank you for continuing to experiment and share those imperfections with us, because that's really where a lot of the beauty is. And with that, I have a question. What was obviously when you're starting, there's a number of audiences that would look at your work. What was the reception to it initially? Because I would think that you know you have a very specific um, appeal, right? I wonder if the traditional art world had something to say to it, and that's why you have that reaction saying it was imperfections that drew people in, or was it kind of synonymous that people said, "Hey, we're onto something here"?
Well, it was funny early on. I mean, you don't really get to see this in my work nowadays, but like when I was first starting, I had a lot of there was some characteristics of my art that were specifically very digital. Like artists who start who start digitally, they they don't have the same experience with color mixing as traditional artists do, and so I was missing like a part of my education when it came to color. And so I would get these criticisms from these traditional artists over and over again, being like, "You're mixing black in your shadows," and I was like, "I don't know what you mean. Like there is no black. It's just they're all just RGB values. Like
Right.
there's no black tube of paint." And as time went on, and I studied a lot of traditional influences, and I experimented with like solutions process wise to color, I found my way out of it to try to create like a lot of the more natural color mixing that happens with pigment through digital paint. which is kind of unnatural for digital because it tends to do it tends to do different things with color than traditional does. And I found a process that allowed me to create a much more naturalistic form of color mixing, and I stuck with it. And so I got the comment I started to get as my work matured was a lot of traditional artists assuming that I was a traditional artist or I had a background in it because they recognized some of the some of the fundamental properties of the work had these roots in this longer tradition. So they're just like they were actually really surprised to find out that I was painting these entirely in Photoshop and that there was not pigment behind them. And I was always flattered by that impression, because I've always romanticized a lot of the traditional art tradition, like the people who are scraping pigment on a board. I look at that stuff like with an incredible amount of reverence, and so like to be mistaken for that, I always saw as a really high compliment. And I've leaned into it a little bit by trying to put in little touches that are going to confuse and confound people who aren't quite sure what medium I'm working in.
Right. Yeah. And I would think the inverse happens now, and they look at you with bewilderment that you can accomplish this just with Photoshop, and what you do. But yeah, that was my reaction initially when looking at it. This nearly looks like a painting that's digitized somehow, but entirely painted manually.
Yeah, I mean it's painted manually. Like it's like there's aspects of it where the digital process allows me to shortcut and speed things up from where it would be if it were an oil. But it does it each of the marks is still a handmade mark. It's still
Right.
hand placed the same way that traditional painting is. I just don't have to worry about things like dry time or layering or any of the physical practical concerns that traditional painters are really familiar with that like even our appreciators typically don't encounter because they don't have to actually deal with the physicality of painting. Um, Photoshop is incredibly powerful in that respect, but it's also it's not a freebie. If you're going to go and do everything manually, you get like you're going to always be having no one's ever going to be spotting a texture in your work that they know from like, or they're not going to be spotting a pose from some stock photo. If you build everything from scratch the way I do, people who really know the medium are always going to look at it and go like, oh, this is all original. You're not just kit bashing here. This is like all straight for your dome. And I'm like, yeah, well, very few people can recognize the difference between something that's built from stock parts and what is being done entirely from scratch. And I'm not even sure if there's necessarily like a valuable distinction, because I know some of the most revered digital artists today work quite a bit from stock materials, and I don't see it as really a shortcoming. But it's like, I do things the hard way for reasons that are entirely my own.
Yeah. Um,
I'm hoping
man,
somebody looks at that and goes like, man, that makes his work way more valuable.
No, for sure. Knowing the process and what goes into it is definitely a big aspect of people understanding. In addition to this, the beauty of the work, the artistry that really goes into it. So Makerspace contacts you in 2018 and asks you to do NFTs, but you said 8 years ago, you said, I'm just gonna stop basically working for other people and establish my own brand, so to speak, and kind of let that be the main focus. So you
Right.
were already trying, you were already not trying, you were already accomplishing being an independent artist and really leveraging the community and your fandom to try to, perpetuate your career and put things out there. So when they talked to you about NFTs, what was your reaction? Was that a natural progression and it made sense, or did it take a little while to settle in?
No, I mean, I understood it instantly because it was like there had been an ongoing discussion in the digital art community about how do you sell a digital original. And people had come up with all sorts of dumb ideas about like, oh, I'm going to burn the only copy of the file to a CD, and then that CD is going to be the original. And like everything that everybody had proposed up to that point didn't work and was not respected. And I didn't know whether or not that was going to work because in 2018 there wasn't really any proof that I had seen that NFTs were like a solution that was going to be accepted widely by the fine art community. But I mean, being an independent artist meant that I was always up for a free bet. You know, I've been there's a wave of artists who are coming independent now as a result of NFTs, like supporting them. But as you mentioned, I've been in this space as an independent creator of a brand, creator of an IP for much longer than NFTs. And part of that has been me just having a sense about what works and what doesn't work from a business perspective. And when I saw NFTs, I was like, I don't know whether or not that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. I'm humble enough to know that I'm not smart enough to see the future on this, but it is worth a shot. It is more than worth a shot to like take these guys' offer to put this stuff up on this website for free and see if any of it sells. And when it did, when the culture came around and found it there and like began to collect it more thoroughly, I was really happy. It's like a perfect fit for what I've been making this whole time. And so I set aside a lot of things last year to focus almost exclusively on NFTs. And in 2022, I've got my biggest projects ever. A lot of them are complete, and I'm just working with developers right now and getting them all finalized. And like my NFT, I don't feel like people have even seen like the full breadth of what I have to offer as an NFT artist yet, because it's I'm still growing into it. I'm assuming it's going to be a major part of what I do as a creator, for the rest of my career.
That's exciting, considering what you've already put out there. I know hearing from you and other media that you're a real advocate for the space and the empowerment that it provides people, both to circumvent gatekeeping and supposed fine art critics that want to tell us what should or shouldn't have the attention in the space, as well as kind of mandating the royalty structure, right, and making sure it's something that's secure for the artists that are involved. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that a little bit more as things have progressed over this past year. Obviously, a big boom has happened and taken things further than they were earlier in 2021.
Yeah, I really love to see, when people are collecting one of ones from auteur creators. I really love to see artists who have like a really strong background with their own independent brands creating NFT brands and NFT series and collections. And I mean, any opportunity I've had to be able to be there as like, whether it's, financial support or like, as a consultant to help people figure out their way through all this, I've been doing my best to do that behind the scenes, just as part of an NFT art community. But yeah, I mean, I'm mostly these days, I'm just rooting for them. It's like NFTs are a controversial topic, and so I want to just make sure that the people who are jumping into the space, the creators that are jumping into the space, feel like there's somebody on their side and there's somebody that's supporting them. And so, if I'm not going to do anything else, I'm going to continue to be that voice for them.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time, and great to see all the advocacy from the collector community and the artist really kind of bring things to the mainstream over the past year. Obviously, the response in 2018, I would think, has been magnified for you in 2021. Tell me a little bit about Angelarium and this IP that you established. What exactly is it about? How would you characterize it? And where did it start and where is it going?
Well, it started, oh man, what was the year? It was maybe 2004. I was a senior in college and I was needed to do a series of 12 pieces. And so I decided I wanted to do a series of angels based off of these esoteric angel names that I had discovered. And so I discovered it was just really, really easy for me to like come up with ideas for a way of personifying a concept. If it was an angel of memory, trying to create a character which represented memory in a personified way, it was just like felt very natural and very easy, like an extension of my existing creativity at the time. And so I just I like did an original 12 and named it Angelarium. I thought that was going to be it. I was like traveling around selling prints of them. But you know, a few years later, I started going back and revising those original 12. I started adding more of them, and I just continued to build on it. And sort of from that blossomed an underlying fiction. There's some short stories that have gone with it that are compiled into a series of books. There's poems that go with each of them, and it's slowly been building like this. You know, what's currently an incomplete epic story that parallels some of the apocryphal books about angels and you know, their contact with mankind. And I'm hoping to some point over the next few years to finish the final book and have a completed story arc that I can have out there in public so other people can see it rather than me just like pitch people, you know, over beers. And you know, I would love to then take that IP and like since take it in its like sort of a weird, a semi-complete form of like a series of disconnected short stories and tie it together into something that's more coherent, like a comic or, you know, a movie or something like that. I really like to be able to like package it up and tell it as like a single story just because I've spent so much time with these characters and I know them so well from having written stories for them and like illustrated them multiple times that it's just like it feels like the natural extension of what I've made so far. The next layer up is to really just, you know, bring something that makes something that brings them all together into one big coherent whole rather than having them all be these disconnected illustrations.
Very cool. And so the angels are all personifications of concepts, or
Mm-hmm.
okay. So that it could run the gamut, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be something benevolent. It could be a dark premise. It could be a number of things, right?
You're right, and like in some cases, it's almost like the inverse of whatever they represent. Like right now, we're looking at the Watchers, who are fallen angels, and so in some cases, they're not really like empowered by whatever thing they represent, but they are actually like, you know, suffering as a result of whatever thing they represent. So the angel of lightning actually gets killed by a lightning strike in the story. So it's like it's not that he is in total command of, you know, he's not shooting lightning bolts out of his hands. You know, it's like lightning is his undoing. So there's ways of sort of representing um, each of these beings not only as the thing, but also as like the opposite of that thing. You know, there's so many opportunities to try to explore these concepts by personifying them and creating a mythology. You know that like lets me explore like the relationship between different concepts. So that's been a big part of the project since the beginning is like, you know, creating this sort of new mythology that has like these sort of demigods that all represent these different aspects of the human experience and showing the ways that they like manifest themselves.
Right. And you write all the stories yourself as well.
Yeah, I've some of this content on the site is was done with some collaborators, mostly the poetry. Like I've experimented with you know, collaborating with people at different times, and so the books I have a co credit for the writing on the first book because a lot of it was originally written by a collaborator of mine, and then when I went to go republish it over the last few years, along with the second book, I ended up working with an editor, development editor, who helped me rewrite a lot of this to like maintain a consistent vision throughout all of it. So I have done, even if I didn't originate every story in there, I have done like a massive amount of editing, rewritten every story, in addition to writing and starting most of them. So.
That's incredible. And it just kind of, to me as a collector, talks to you know, the deep personalization and authenticity of the character, and really the conceptualization of it really going as thorough as possible, you know, through fruition, and what their story will be and everything else. Now there two books, is that right?
Yeah, there's two books right now, and it's part of a trilogy. So the third book is like on the horizon at some point. It was a 5-year development process to get the second book out. I had I had overestimated some stuff and didn't understand some parts of the assignment that I was giving myself, and like now I know how to make a book. So the third one, when I choose to make it, should be a lot easier to get done now that I've like succeeded at this the level that I want to. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of promise of people wanting to create original IPs in the NFT space.
Right.
And people talking about, oh, someday we're going to be making a comic, someday we're going to be writing a book, someday we're going to make a movie or a Netflix animated series. And I'm just like, you guys are so late. Like I've been doing this. I actually had done a lot of that stuff prior to NFTs existing. And so this is like, this is an IP that, while being independent and small by the standards, what's owned by Hollywood, it's still like pretty far along as far as development goes. With having a fan base, having existing material, having spent a lot of time building and maturing. Um, and then, me as a creator having a lot of experience, like actually finishing and publishing stuff rather than just conceptualizing and starting things.
Right.
So, yeah, I think I'm hoping that sparks some level of credibility when it comes to people's perception of like the NFT products that I'm making. But if not, then like I've got more coming because they've got original stuff created just for NFTs that's should be coming out later this year.
So tell me about renewed growth, the drop that you have on
Oh
Makerspace
yeah.
today.
So this
Um,
is a perfect transition. So Quillian, the new piece, is not part of any of the existing Angel series so far. Right now, there's three major groups: the Seraphim, which are the high angels, and there's the Watchers, which are the fallen ones, and then I've got these emanations, which are much more esoteric, that represent the sort of inner life of humanity, the sort of elemental forces of humanity. And then this one is a Scion. Scion is a fresh offshoot. It's and this is sort of the first reveal of what's ultimately going to be a lot of brand new angels. There is no angel, as far as I know, named Quillian. This is not being drawn from existing angelic mythology, but instead this is like the first series that is like fully original for Angelarium. And so this is sort of a preview of what is ultimately going to be a very large collection of scions that are going to be emerging to become part of Angelarium. So I can't say too much about it, but I can say that this is, I think, going to be a historically relevant piece for Angelarium because of it representing like the very first, the genesis of a new collection, a new branch within this project that's been going for a really long time, and um, it's going to be exclusively for NFTs. The Scions are a series that are specifically for this market and not an adaptation of my prior work.
Sounds like some alpha there. That there's more to come. How
Yeah,
about
well,
how,
I want to stress on people like if you're thinking about picking up a piece, this is probably a great place to
it's
start. Like,
probably a good one, and this is a one of
yeah,
one, correct?
this is a one of one. I wanted this. This is the very first time the Scions are revealing themselves. This is a brand new offshoot from a collection, and it is a one of one, standing alone. Um, you know, I, I can't say more, but I would like to stress that I think that this one is I, if I were a collector, I'd buy this one.
Message received, my friend. This is what we like to do. Read between the lines here. So, how about renewed growth? Tell me about that title and the theme here.
Oh man, so I was really 20 the last couple of, I don't know if you realize this, the last couple of years are pretty weird, man. Um,
I'd say
I
so.
yeah, and so there's a lot of stuff for me that ended in 2021, and there was also like a long period of downtime where I stepped away from my work as I had done it traditionally, and I wasn't producing these kinds of pieces at the same pace that I had been for many years, and I was like sort of exploring a lot of stuff within my life, what I wanted to, if I wanted to keep it around, if I wanted to ditch it. And 2022 has been this jumping off point for me where I have feel like I'm finally starting to finish things the way I want to again. I'm building projects on my own terms the way I've always enjoyed. Like as I've, sort of, I'm putting aside a lot of things from the past and building up something brand new. And, I just wanted to channel those feelings as much as possible onto the canvas. And like, there's a sense in my whole life of like the snow melting on this long winter, and this brand new, like these buds are sort of coming up out of the ground, and there's this brand new flowering happening. And so to me, that's what this piece is sort of representing, is this reemergence that's happening after like a long winter. And I've been living in Florida for the last couple of years, so it's not like I've been like sitting inside during the cold or whatever, but it's felt like a 2-year long winter that I'm finally just coming out from right now.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about that pretty heavy right now. I think it's a collective experience and almost a collective trauma that a lot of us have gone through. So love the vision of that thematically. Hopefully I can partake in some of this renewed growth myself, but I'm just a Nephilim. I'm definitely not of the angelic sphere here. So this is the one of one, but there's also another piece of this collection, correct?
Yeah, I brought in an older piece from my collection that hadn't been minted before, that I just felt like meshed with it stylistically and thematically. This is the second painting I'd done of Israfel, the Angel of Song. And I wanted the original one was very dark and foreboding, but I thought that the Angel of Song deserved a more optimistic view. And so I imagined this angel sort of hanging out in this very pastoral landscape, strumming away at its lyre, and like being not playing for anybody, but still being this like object of interest. And so I had this, this is about spending time doing the things that you really love for their own sake. This is me enjoying some, like appreciating some of my inspirations of, pastoral art, classical, Baroque painting, and just enjoying the process of it and appreciating just strumming away. So that's also something I've been feeling a lot recently, getting back into making stuff a lot of the ways that I used to, and like feeling that, renewed sense of interest, just spending time at the canvas, strumming away at stuff. So I'm hoping that those two pieces tie together nicely in terms of their character.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Um, Excited about. I see some comments in our community where people are also excited about the prospects of what this new character and what the scions could mean for your projects going forward. I know you can't divulge too much more on that, but these may be leaning into it. I don't know. There's some other questions for the community I'd love to throw in front of you. Someone wants
Sure.
to know, what are your thoughts on the ability to incorporate interactive elements via the smart contract into some of your works?
I mean, I would love to. Doing more stuff with, engaging with like the more uh, esoteric features of blockchain technology is something I'd love to be involved in. But one of the old habits of mine is that I'm an independent creator, and I end up having to do everything myself. And I am not a developer, so I have to break out of those habits, and I have to start finding more ways to collaborate in order to like do stuff like that. And rather than sit around and wait for the right person to call me up, I think I need to at some point start to explore that by seeking out developers and inciting these projects myself. And that's definitely something that's been on my mind as one of the
Right.
things I want to jump into over the next year or two.
Somewhat in the same vein, any thoughts on integrating integrations or possibly bringing your art into the metaverse for something?
I am so interested in figuring out what the metaverse is, not because I haven't done any exploration on it. I mean, I've seen all the people, talking about it, and I understand, what they're talking about, but I don't think that anybody knows what the metaverse is yet. I have my own theories about what I think the metaverse is and what it means and like what are its key attributes, but I haven't seen anybody say the same things that I've been thinking. So I'm I'm either like um, very, very prophetic, and I have a clearer vision of the future than the average person, or I'm just super wrong, and I'm totally delusional. It's one of the two. But I really think that the metaverse is really less about like a platform and more about, I think the key aspect of it is interoperability. And someone's going to be pulling up a clip of this 10 years from now and being like, he was right, interoperability was the whole thing. Or, you know, maybe it's just the thing I like. And, that's actually has nothing to do with what the metaverse ultimately will be. But I really think that everything is potentially the metaverse. Everything we currently have is potentially the metaverse. It's just it's not going to be until we have the connective tissue, all of the in-between stuff that makes the metaverse possible as a result of creating layers of interoperability between all the different things that are already out there. The Fortnites and Twitter and whatever the fuck Facebook is working on. You know, I think the idea that like a person is creating the metaverse is kind of like not what the metaverse is. Like it's got to be meta, right? It's got to be something that exists not in something but between things. And so, um, you know, do I want to create something in the metaverse? It's like, does that mean am I going to create a 3D world? Because I don't even think the metaverse is necessarily 3D. Um, I mean, I'm sure parts of it are, but yeah, I would love to create 3D stuff if that's the real question. Like, do I want to create 3D worlds of people that hang out in VR? Like 1,000% yes. It's like on my roadmap as like things to do once I've cleared out some of the other stuff that I already have, like that I promised myself I was going to do. Like, yeah, creating 3D spaces to like spend time in VR that are like branded for Angelarium, that are in the world of Angelarium, like absolutely. I'm such a huge fan of that stuff, and I've been dreaming of it for a while. And so I think the main thing that's kept me from doing it is that it's scary to go away from the mediums I'm familiar with and like jump into something totally new, like and having to learn new disciplines. But
Right.
I think I've always overcome that sense of fear in the past when something's important, and so that to me, I think it seems like it's likely to happen just because I have like this intimidation factor when I think about it. And that's always been a good sign that something's an important project to be involved in.
Yeah, someone says 11th dimensional beings deserve the metaverse as well.
Yeah.
And what you said about interoperability, it's ironic because I have an article on my desk from one of our writers who talks about just that, right? Like, is it really the metaverse if all these separate entities are branding their space, yet it's kept, far apart? There needs to be some level of, no matter what
Yeah.
it is or where you are, you exist in this metaverse. You just got to make the connection. So I think the person asking that question was just excited on where else can we see you expanding beyond these current mediums, right? And is there anything
Yeah.
exciting in the pipeline?
I haven't started anything. I know like I have fans who work in a lot of different mediums. And so I know that if I were to try to reach out and like find a collaborator to work on something that was in Unreal, like I bet you I could find someone. And like that's the thing I think that really scares me is like the very real possibility of being able to get it done is more intimidating than like the fear that it won't ever be done. The reality of it is like it is always terrifying
Right.
because then it presents the real possibility of failure.
Well, I guess in the same vein, someone asks, with your familiarity with designing for gaming, any interest in bringing some NFT gaming assets forward?
Oh man, I think about NFT gaming all the time. Um, like I think about the ways in which interoperability can be brought to gaming through NFTs, and I have heard so little about it on the roadmaps. People talking about NFT gaming, like just waiting for it to happen, and I keep feeling a little afraid that I'm going to have to nut up and go and like build something NFT gaming related if I want to see this in the world. Um, So that one is probably not the first place I'm going to jump into something more metaversy. I probably go with interactive worlds before I start getting into something like blockchain card collecting or whatever.
Right.
But I, if I see an opportunity to jump into it, I mean, I'm a gamer, so I would relish the opportunity to be involved in a project like that if it were the right project for me.
Yeah, ironically, a lot of us have been dabbling with some new projects that have come out that have focused on just that, right? There's been some blockchain gaming kind of real estate that allowed you to take certain assets and just use them as your avatar or your pets or your equipment, which we thought was pretty cool. It's still not to the level where everything could be part of it, but for some of these particular projects, if they're pixel based or something, so say you had a dystopunk or a moon cat or whatever, they're incorporated in part of that world. So hopefully that's a step in the right direction, like you're
Yeah,
saying, where
maybe. What I really want to see more than anything when it comes from NFT gaming, this is like totally aside from my own stuff, is I really just want to see like, when I was prototyping a card game, and I grabbed a bunch of Magic cards and I just wrote new rules on top of them. I like was just drawing on them with the Sharpie to make a prototype. And I think that that is the spirit of what I could see somebody building, is to take something like Parallel Alpha and be like, oh, we're just going to build our own client with our own different set of game rules, and we're going to use these cards in a way that is unapproved by the original developers. And like, I think that that's something that's possible to do in NFT gaming that I haven't seen anybody explore yet. And I think that is like where some of the most exciting opportunities are. So like one of the ways I would want to do it is to like take, instead of building a collection of original cards or original collectibles, to take an existing collection and build a new client for them, to make them interoperable, to like reward people who already bought into other people's ecosystems, and to like present like extended life and extended value that goes beyond the vision of the original creators in a way that they didn't give permission for. I think that kind of like punk rock, like stealing shit and building something new out of it, is like where the metaverse emerges from. Um, and right now, there's like not enough material for everybody to be able to do that with. So like everyone's building new projects, but really, I think it's going to come. There's like a layer of this that comes when we already have successful projects and somebody just steals one and just full on like builds their own new game client on top of Axie Infinity or whatever. And it's gonna be really interesting and really exciting when that finally happens. I Part of the reason I'm not like shooting to do that myself is because my skill set is really on creating new things rather than like taking stuff and like building, kit bashing it. Otherwise, like that would be my primary focus, because I think that vision is really exciting for me. What else?
100% with you on that. Absolutely. I've long said that, this all of the NFT assets are primed for vampire attacks, and it doesn't have to be in a hostile way, but I could say, hey, you have this asset that means in this game you could do X, Y, and Z. So kind of the inverse in a kind of a more tepid version, but 100%. So someone should be able to come over the top and use the blockchain, especially a public blockchain, and use those assets for a new game.
Oh yeah, and people say like, oh, you would never be able to do that because you would have to get permission from the original developer. I was like, no, you wouldn't. Like it's on the
Right.
blockchain. It's like it's not on somebody's server. You're not stealing from them. It's in public. It's just the same as if you were to like take a pack of bicycle playing cards and invent a new card game. Like it's an open standard. People own these things. They're allowed to do what they want with the things that they own, and that includes plugging them into a client for which they weren't originally developed for. Like, I don't think it's even that hard from a technical perspective. It really just requires somebody to commit to like building on top of a foundation that's not their own.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know. I really believe strongly in that vision, but it's like it's not where my expertise is, so I can't contribute so much. I'm just hoping that somebody, hears this and goes up and does it, makes some headlines.
Right. No, absolutely. We had Giant Swan on not long ago, who you're probably familiar with, but he makes amazing VR art, almost in line with an aesthetic like your stuff, quite honestly. And he just said the same thing. He said, "Look, there's been a lot of success over the past year, and things have gotten a lot of attention and blown up. But let's not forget, this is punk rock, right? We're here to break
Right.
shit. We're here to experiment and do stuff. So we need to stick to that vision and get back to it if it's veered away a little bit too much." So I love hearing the same thing.
Yeah, we just have too many years of corporate overlords, like, and just getting used to having other people tell us what we can do with our own stuff. And like, I think it's just dawning on people. Web3 is sort of allowing people to finally look at it and go like, wait a minute, like we actually get to own our own things. Like when we pay for something, we actually own it. Like, and open up to that idea again for the first time, because it's always been that way. We got out of the habit of realizing it was true.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons I'm like, I'm really I'm invested in all this stuff, because it's like, a natural fit for my art. But really, I'm also just a huge fan of the sort of futurism of this space. Like, I really believe in,
Right.
like,
Essentially doing a lot of it prior to the technology being where it's at now, right? Like you said, I'm going directly to the people and I'm going to
oh yeah.
circumvent, the platforms and everything else.
Well, I've used the platforms to my advantage where they suit me, and then I've gone and built my own stuff where I needed something new.
Right.
And it's like, I've recognized a long time ago that, like, artists, creators have the ability to own their own value, and own their own work and profit from their own work without having to like get permission from corporate overlords. And it's it's a scary idea, and so people have sort of looked at it and dreamed about it, but I've not seen so many creative people jump in and do it until they saw the it being done in this incredibly public way through NFTs. The transparency of Web3 made it so that people realized that that wasn't just a nice idea. It was like a real thing that creators could, prosper from.
Right. I love it. Well, I know we're coming up on the hour, but I have a few more that have been DM'd to me, questions that I'd love to get
Sure.
off before the community will let me have it if I don't ask you. So I'm going to rapid fire these for you. What are some of your favorite commercial projects you've worked on?
Favorite commercial projects? I was a big fan of World of Warcraft for a long time, and then I got to do the splash art for the new expansion. It's not cool to work for Blizzard these days, but I thought it was fun to work with them.
I did not know that you did that. That's very cool.
Yeah, they based a lot of the concept art on their new expansion off of Angelarium. You can even see the Angelarium symbol on some of the shields in the game, and then they asked me to do some promotional art for it. So the loading screens inside the new WoW expansion feature artwork by me.
Very cool. On a related note, if Warcraft aside, what are some of your favorite gaming IPs? Is one of the questions.
Oh my God, Dark Souls, the Soulsborne series, obviously, like, that is absolutely in line with my aesthetic. I've never gotten to work with them, but they did steal one of my concept art, one of my pieces from a Magic card that I did. So it's technically they stole a piece from Wizards of the Coast for Dark Souls 2. You can look that up. It's pretty funny. I was like playing through Dark Souls 2, and I was like, wait, what the fuck? Like, I like ran into an enemy that was like something that I had made for a Magic card. Some people believe me, some people think that I'm stretching it, but I am 1,000% sure that one of my Magic card pieces was turned into a Dark Souls 2 enemy.
And did that get you enraged or excited
Oh
or
no,
maybe
no, no!
both?
I love as I said before, I love the creative connection, the chain of connection that goes between artists throughout art history, and so like it is a huge honor to have downline connections from that process. Like, anybody can go and be inspired by somebody else, but to have your work inspire somebody is like I think the ultimate goal of every artist's pursuit. So having my stuff be found inside, DNA from it found inside video games and movies and stuff is one of my absolute favorite things. I love it.
Dope. Someone asks, what are some NFT projects or artists that you yourself are a fan of?
I use the Oni avatar because I really like the work from I Am Complex, the artist behind the Oni Force. And then I haven't. I really missed out on collecting some of my other favorite projects. Like I really like doodles. I really like cool cats. I think the sort of irreverent, cute style is really cool. But I always end up, I was like looking at them, going like, oh, cool cats at like 1 ETH. I don't know if I could afford that. Like, and now they're at like 15 today or whatever. So I'm a huge idiot when it comes to this stuff. I'm a terrible trader. So many of my favorite projects I don't own, but I do own way too many Uniforce. So I'm gonna rep them, even if they're not cool and they're not worth that much these days.
Right. Yeah. Someone had asked, "What's up with the Plague Doctor mask?" And I think you just answered it there.
Yeah. It's just like I've got some of them that I'll probably sell for the right price, and then I've got one that I set aside that I was like, I'm just gonna make this my avatar for a really long time. Like I don't really want to be changing out and have new NFT profile picture every time a new collection comes out and like confuse everybody. I wanted to like pick one from that had like from a creator I really liked and just rep that like way past the point where it was cool.
Right.
And just stick with it for a long ass time. I had a punk for a while and then I sold it. So I was like, I gotta pick something that's like just more me and not just because I think other people like it.
Right. And the last one, someone says, you've done a lot of cool collaborations with Coldy, etc. Any collaborations in the works that we'd be surprised about?
The collaboration I'm really looking forward to at the end of the month, I'm doing a drop on something called with Atemporal Productions, where they wrote an original piece of symphonic music that was recorded in a live symphony orchestra. And that's like, I don't know. I thought that was so cool. Like, I don't know whether or not anybody's going to care about this drop, but I thought an opportunity to like have a one-of-one painting of mine scored by a live orchestra was so cool. I was gonna actually that's what I'm working on while we're talking. I was like, that's so cool. I don't care if anybody likes it. Like this is just the sort of project that I think is like exciting to be a part of.
Right. Very cool. So that drops at the end of the month, you said?
Yeah, I think it's like last day of the month. Atemporal Productions. The name has an 8 in it. Like
very cool. Yeah, I think I had seen that reference somewhere, and there's some other artists involved as well, right?
Yeah. It's there's a collection of art, and they're all being done to fit together into like into a collection. I don't know what I can talk about, what I can't. They've got some promo out on their Twitter. They need some love. If you guys think that it sounds like a really cool idea to see a bunch of NFTs that are scored by a live orchestra, like look up Atemporal Productions because I think it's a really cool project. And I'm hoping that by the time all the drops happen, people will discover it because I don't think anybody's following it right now, as far as I can tell.
I think that's I think I had come across that. I think that's why someone had mentioned Coldy. I think he may be a part of that as well. So we'll dig that up and we'll drop the link in our community chat after this. But yes. I did want to make sure everyone to reiterate here, the drop is today on Makersplace. You can look up Angelarium or Peter Mohrbacher and the first Scion, a historic piece to what we don't know exactly, but it sounds like there's some stuff in the pipeline.
Isn't that the story for NFTs? Like, I guarantee this thing is big, but you don't know what it is yet. Like, this is how.
Yeah, but like if it's coming from a credible source like you, I think people would pay attention. So we appreciate the alpha.
I've held off making claims like that on other drops. Like, I've been upfront about. I try to be upfront about what I do rather than overhype it. And
right.
So that when I actually do try to like go and build hype for stuff, people believe me. But yeah, we'll see. I've cut my head down for a while. I don't know if anybody knows, but I haven't been posting a ton of new artwork recently. There's a reason for that.
Big stuff to come. Peter, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We're excited to see what comes of this drop and what you have in the near future. Best of luck, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Take care.